Well, this is it. This is the last Evinrude 2 video. Got all my parts laid out right here. I got what's left of the motor sitting right here. The engine. Check it out. Look at what it looks like with everything stripped off. That's where the carburetor goes. This is where the spark plug goes. This is where the, all the electronics and the starter go right up top there. There's not much to it when it's all stripped down. And this is it. This is the last video with this motor. Wrapping it up today. And by wrapping it up, I mean I'm quitting. I'm gonna wrap it up in a box and I'm gonna send it away. I'm giving up. I'm surrendering. I quit. I know some of you are probably really disappointed because you wanted to see this thing run. You wanted me to see it through. You don't like a quitter. I get that. I don't like being a quitter. Some of you might think that this is the first time I've ever tried to do a project like this, and it's not. It's not my first rodeo. I actually brought a Evinrude 6 horsepower back from the dead, and I brought back a 7.5 horsepower Mercury 2-stroke that had unknown issues, and I bought that one not knowing what was wrong with it. The guy who I bought it from had bought it to fix up, and it had been sitting in his garage for a long time, and he never got around to it, and so I bought it from him, crossed my fingers, took a chance, and that one worked out just fine. I spent very little to get that motor running. But this one here, this was a mistake. One of my first videos about this engine, I talked about how much I spent for it. I paid $175 for it, which was a mistake. That was way too much for this engine in not running condition, but at the time, it was all I could find. I had been looking for a while. And honestly, some of that has to do with why I'm giving up. But another big part of why I'm giving up is the latest part that broke, and that's in this plate right here. We'll talk about that in a minute. But when I bought this motor, I had been looking for a small, cheap 2-stroke outboard. Finally, this one came up in not running condition. And I had had 2 previous successes, and I thought, I certainly can get another one running again. And shortly after buying this engine, before I even got a chance to really look up some things and diagnose what it needed, this Mercury 2.5 right here came along. I spent, I think about $300 for this Mercury 2.5. I honestly actually don't really need this engine. And that's been part of the problem. It's not like I need a really small 2-stroke outboard. I have one, and it's good. It works for me all the time. When I posted the first video asking the question, should I fix this thing or just hang it up as art? Many of you told me to fix it, and I do appreciate that. And several of you told me not to bother. You had some really great comments. Yeah. That's a really great point. You're right. Yes, that says it all right there. There you go. But I decided to just give it a shot. And what this engine is a really great example of is something known as sunk cost fallacy. Basically, sunk cost fallacy is throwing good money after bad. If you're a gambler and you're still losing, you're like, but I've already spent $5,000. I need to just keep going until I win. And that's what this engine has turned into. Because nearly everything was wrong with this engine. Way more than any other engine I've revived. I mean, all the way down to things like the petcock on the fuel tank. This still isn't right. It opens, but it doesn't close completely. But it moves now. And I haven't even gotten into whether it needs a lower unit seal, whether it runs right. But the straw that broke the camel's back was as I was working on the points and the coil, and I had bought myself a nice Sierra tune-up kit right here, and I was removing everything to clean this up. Right here is where something screws in called an eccentric screw. The eccentric screw is a really neat screw because it has an offset head on it. So the threads go down and there's an offset head, and the head works as a lobe, and that's how you set your points so that your point gap is just right. So basically you loosen everything up, you use that screw to get the points gap set just right, and then you tighten everything else down. The eccentric screw snapped off into this base plate. Not because I manhandled it or used power tools. I actually use hand tools a lot so that I don't break things like this. It just hadn't been moved in, who knows, 40 years maybe? And it was seized up in there. Matter of fact, I've tried to drill it out and there's still a lot of it left in this hole. Now, it doesn't mean this is unfixable. You can actually still get this part, but this part's about $60. The eccentric screw is about $11. So, for about $71, I can replace this bad part. And I got to this point, and after I tried drilling that out, and it didn't drill out right away, to be able to just thread in a new eccentric screw, I started looking at having to buy new taps, because I only have metric taps, and I need standard taps, or other ways to be able to try to make that work. And I realized I should just stop. I've put a lot of time, too much money, and too much effort into reviving this little engine that I really don't need, because I got this one right next to it, which is about the same. And that one runs. At one point in time, I actually thought if I walked away from it for a couple of days and thought about it, I'd be ready to go back at it again. But the more I look at it, the more I just don't want to mess with this anymore. I am just so done with this engine. And whenever I embraced the sunk cost fallacy, I started to feel really good about it, because I was still going forward no matter what, because I felt like I had to finish it. And we all do this. We feel like we have to finish what we started. I've already done this. I've been working on it for so long. It's so close. I need to just keep going. No, I don't. I don't need to just keep going. I need to just box this up and give it to somebody who may be able to use some of the parts off of it, or might be able to get it running and do something fun with it. But as they say with this sort of stuff, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So for me, I have well over $200 invested in this, probably $250 total, because I've rebuilt the carburetor with the cheapest carburetor rebuild kit I could find, which I think would still work. I've got a point set for it. I've got some other parts of it working now, but I still don't know what else is wrong. Matter of fact, the best part of this engine is this right here. This rebuilt starter from Brandon of Brandon's Garage YouTube channel. He did that for me, and he did a great job with that. And basically, here's what's going on. When I decided I'm not working on this anymore, I reached out to Brandon. He actually was looking around to see if he had a spare one of these to send to me, which he didn't. And I appreciate him doing that. And I asked him, I said, do you want this engine? And he said, sure. So here's what I'm going to do. Pack it up real nice, and I'm going to send it to Brandon. I don't want anything for it. I'm going to give him everything I have here, except for my pen. I'm keeping my pen. Because he's got the parts, he's got the know-how, and if he does have to buy one of these and the eccentric screw, he'll only have about $70 into this engine. And if nothing else needs to be repaired on it and he can make everything else work with what I have here, he'll have a $70 running two-stroke Evinrude 2. And that's pretty cool. It's not a bad price for one to be running. But for me to just keep going with it, I'm just done. Here's what I learned by messing with this engine. If I go to ever buy another outboard engine that doesn't run, I'm going to check a lot of parts on it to see what might be good before I spend any money buying a non-running engine. Because, you know, if I were to have turned this petcock, tried these carburetor jets, pulled the starter cord, rotated this, I would have seen that all of those things were bad. And I would have said, wow, this is going to need everything fixed on it, not just a couple things. But I looked at it, I got excited, and I said, wow, I can't wait to bring that home and get it running. And that was the mistake. And so I learned to check more things before buying something. Now, this doesn't mean I won't be making more videos with other non-running engines. Oh no. I've got some non-running engines sitting around here. But I can tell you, I don't have $175 wrapped up in those non-running engines. And so I'm kind of looking forward to messing around with those once my space is clear of this one. Be sure to watch and subscribe to Brandon's Garage YouTube channel. You may see this engine come back someday. He may be making a video about getting it running. He may not. It may just sit in his parts bench, and that's perfectly fine. I know it's going to a good home. I'm not throwing it away, and I'm not just hanging it on my wall for art. I'm giving it to somebody who can do something good with it. Besides, I'd hate to put that really great starter cord just hanging on the wall doing nothing. I'd much rather see it put to good use, starting this engine up someday so I can see it running in a video. Would you have seen this project through to the end? Or would you have not even started it? Let me know in the comments below. But until I get started on another project, here's another video right here you should watch. It's related to this.